All right, so in this one, I'm working my way across the painting at the bottom, and I'm just doing a little background work here. And this is a little hillside that leads down to the canyon edge. And there are some rocks and some shadows, and there's going to be ultimately a little bit of greenery. I mean, some cactus and some wild grass, but it's pretty barren and rocky. And so I'll be building up some of that and working my way across the painting from left. Actually, I'm going to jump past the door and work on the far right hand side. And there isn't much to describe about this other than my normal procedure, which is working usually from light to dark, and in the textured areas, just dragging my brush through a lot and creating layers. I'm also using the drawing gum to make the surface look rocky in the near foreground, and that's pretty effective for that purpose. So what I'll be doing then is speeding this up, and you'll see how this develops. I'm going to be jumping across, as I said, to the far right hand side of the painting, and I think the very last thing I'm going to be working on is the entryway there and the doorway at the base, and that'll do it. But here we go, and I'll put on some music by Jim Brandt as usual, and I'll see you in a few minutes.
stepping out. But I'm not afraid anymore. I'm in control. I'm in control. I had the same question. I'm in control. I had the same question. But I'm not afraid anymore. Stop staring. My eyes are up here.
Okay. Okay.
All right, I've moved across all the way to the far right of the painting, and I'm now going to be working on the stump and the ground and all things distant. There's some trees to be done, and I'm kind of violating my own rule because the tree is usually, or the stump is usually one of the final things I would do because it's down at the bottom of the picture plane. It's in the foreground and closest to me, and I'm going to have to be putting my arm in it. But I just felt like doing it. I just enjoy doing it. It's kind of fun. I put down some drawing gum, as you can probably tell, for that green tint, and then I had dragged my finger across it multiple times in the direction of the wood grain and opened it up in a kind of a random pattern, as you can see. And it's allowing the paint to get into the bare paper, and even though I'm painting right over the top of all that drawing gum, it of course will settle into those areas that are exposed paper. Now, this technique works probably the best for ground rocky ground or a beach or something where it looks like pebbles. But it also works pretty well for the preliminary stages of something like bark. A lot of the bark, though, has to be done with a liner brush and dry brush without any kind of resist material, because the when you drag your finger across the stuff, it doesn't really open in a directional kind of grain. It sort of opens up in little holes, and it doesn't necessarily look like bark to me. So I'll be painting over a lot of this, and in fact, this area here is going to be pretty dark. It's in shadow. So this is the back side of the stump. The other side of the stump, of course, is exposed to light. So this is going to be the high contrast area. So these steps here are pretty simple because I'm not having to control my brush all that much. I can just paint right over that resist, and then the paint will settle into any exposed paper. I'll probably do 2 applications. I'll paint and let it dry, and then I'll remove it, and then I'll probably do it one more time before I go to strictly brushwork. The area behind the stump has some trees sketched in, just limbs lightly, and that all will be given life, hopefully, and it'll fill in with, there's a lot of greenery back there, and then below that you get to the rim of the canyon, or it's really all that far away from where our point of view is. It's probably, if we're talking feet, it would be 30 feet away. And that ground is very light, and that's why I put the resist material on there. I just didn't want to get the paper splattered or something. So I will press on with this, and then I'm going to bring you guys back when I do the trees, because that is a different technique altogether and a bit more of a challenge. So I'll talk about that step when all of this is dry and I feel like moving on. I probably won't complete the stump, but I'll probably jump over there after this is dry. back, and at this stage I'm just drawing some tree trunks and branches as a guideline for the work that I'll be doing here. These are smaller trees that grow out of the cliffside, really, and there are several together. They're not gigantic mature trees, but they require the same attention as everything else here, which is a lot of detail work, albeit they are further away and less distinct. So with the trunk here, it would be difficult to just start putting in foliage, so the trunk gives me a little bit of a guideline and indicates where I need to do what. It'll be a little bit darker toward the base of these trees because you're looking not only at the bottom of the trees but also behind it. It will be the depth of the canyon because it's a steep drop behind it. Now the canyon isn't complete behind this because I didn't want the dark shaded canyon walls to interfere with the green that has to go into these trees. And if I tried to overpaint, generally it wouldn't work because the transparent greens would not cover the color of the shaded canyon walls. So I just left it white paper, and I will do my best to fill in behind these trees once they're all done. And there are stages here where in distance you have to kind of think how distinct does all this need to be. And it's, okay, in feet I would guess 50, 60, a little bit more feet down the hill, and so it's not going to be all that clear. You don't have to paint individual pine needles or anything like that, but you can definitely see the light and dark contrasts in the trees, of which there are several. And then there's also a bunch of scrub on the ground, and there's branches everywhere. And so this is I have a pretty good idea. I have a bit of a sketch, but I have a pretty good idea what I'm going to do here, and it's just sort of freelance. I'm just, I've done enough of these kinds of trees that I can just kind of wing it. And branches, you just kind of have to have a feel for it, or just keep in mind that everything's got to taper out towards its end, and I'm just using a super small brush here, so there's no problem of making big egregious blobs or anything. And another benefit here is, working in nature, should you do something that looks unnatural to you, it's not that hard at this stage to pick it up with a little bit of water and a brush mop, or you can just get it wet and eliminate it with a paper towel. And you see me doing that quite a bit. On the ground I still have the art gum protecting that one area of the edge of the cliff because that's going to be very light, and I've already found that protecting this paper wherever possible is a big benefit because I've splattered a little bit here and there, and so I'm glad it has been protected, particularly up in the sky, because there's little blips of color all over that plastic I put up there, which would have got into the paper, and those are really hard to eliminate once you've painted something like that, of kind of a light wash. So that's effective. So that's one good use for the art gum. It also is great for textures, and I use it quite a bit on the ground because it helps to make those kinds of rocky textures on the ground, which you'll see coming up. And now I'm going to pick up the pace. I think I should mention the colors are simply all of my earth tones, and the greens that I'm using primarily are sap green, olive green, a little bit of hooker's green, and then I touch them with all kinds of mixes. I might touch it with yellow ochre. I might even add a little, if it's the base of a trunk or something that's in shadow, I like to add a little bit of a blue. Cerulean is being used quite a bit in this for the, adding just a touch of shadow. Alizarin crimson, some of the browns. So there's really no time that I use a straight color right out of the tube. In fact, almost never. I always have a mixture of some sort, and I just play around with them and kind of get a feel for what's working at that particular moment for whatever I'm doing. And so I will pick up the pace, we'll listen to some music, and I will come back when I get to another phase of the painting. Well, here I've moved over to the stump, and I'm still working with a liner brush. I'm doing some of the little details to create the look of bark, and trying to create a lot of texture, a lot of contrast, and there's a lot of color. Just about every brown on the palette is used on this thing, and it's really fun to do. You can't really make a mistake if you work deliberately, kind of slowly, because it's all in shadow, and there are a few rocks that can be seen behind it on the edge of the cliff, which I've sketched lightly. There's not much to sketch really, but I'm kind of drawing with the paintbrush again, trying to create the look of a rough surface. Now with the rocks, I stay away from the brown for some of them because it makes it look like ground, and instead I use more blues and grays, and so in the highlighted portion, maybe a touch of ochre or something to highlight and very dilute, and then for shading on the surface I usually drag my brush across with a combination of maybe a little bit of cerulean blue, even a little bit of black added to it, and then a very dilute so you're not putting on anything heavy. And then this is something you'll see me do all the time. Paper towel, just picking up, putting down some color, picking it up, and that's essentially layer one. And then I'll go back and put in more color and possibly remove some of it. So building up layers until I'm satisfied I have what I want. And one of the things that you have to consider while you're doing these kinds of objects, big boulders and things, no matter what the size of an object in the painting, they all are subject to the light and shade properties that are apparent everywhere else. And so it's universal, and even if you're doing a little stone laying on the ground, everything is a 3D object and has to be treated as such. If you just lay a blob of color down, it doesn't make sense. So it has to catch the light, and it has to cast a shadow. So that's something that I'm always thinking about. What direction the light's coming? Is there something above it that's going to cast a shadow on top of it? Does it cast a shadow of its own? What direction, etc., etc. So the backside of this tree is a pretty good example of where there's a shadow cast by the tree itself, the backside, and all the bark here is really dark. A couple of the colors that I like to use in shadow, Alizarin Crimson is very effective, and rather than using black on the tree or most anywhere else, I'm using the sepia, which gets ultra dark. You can't really tell it from a black, but it is a brown. And other combinations that are nice in shadow include the, as I mentioned, the cerulean blue. Payne's Gray works as long as you combine it with something else, because it's so strong. You have to beware. Alizarin Crimson is very strong also, and you have to watch out. You don't get it too red. It's very, very, very overpowering. But it works if you combine it with your browns and create that kind of reddish bark. So there's places on this stump that where the bark has come off, and that's a good place to add a little bit of the red to it, and a touch of orange works well actually, and sparingly in shaded areas. Well, I'm moving over into the light. You can see I've got a little bit of that drawing gum on the ground behind the tree, and that's going to be very, very light, edge of the cliff area, and then there's going to be a bunch of scrubby stuff growing on the ground back there. Oh, and here we go back to the boulders. So I'm kind of just jumping around all over the place. I'm going to move ahead to talk about what I'm going to do here on the ground in the foreground. And the tree will be casting a shadow that's it has its own pattern from the branches, and it's going to come all the way down to the bottom of the picture plane. But there are some rocks on the ground that I'll be doing first, and if possible you want to paint just about everything that's down on the ground before you do the cast shadows, because it's very difficult to, if you put down shadows, to work around them and then without compromising the edges of the shadows. But you'll see me using a whole lot of the drawing gum, and I'm going to dilute it actually at times, because it comes out really thick out of the bottle, and I put a little bit in the cap, and then I add a tiny bit of adhesive remover solvent, which I'm not completely sure what's in that. It's not a smell I enjoy, but anymore I'm not sure where you buy it, other than I know you can get it at like an auto parts place. Not sure about Home Depot, but it's out there. It's just I think it's a 3M product, but there's probably a lot of them. Anyway, it's just adhesive remover, and it will combine with your art gum to an extent. It's not a perfect blend, and so I mean it won't dilute it and just make it creamy smooth. it's got a mind of its own, but it does work well enough so that you can get some of that stickiness out of the art gum, or the tendency to congeal and blob up and make big inconsistent lumps. And why would I do that? Because to create all the little pebbles, I've tried a couple of things. You can draw them, with a paintbrush, that is. You can actually put them in individually, and sometimes that's the way to go, really. But I tried using the art gum and just doing the old paint flick technique, where I was just hitting the brush across my finger, and all these little blobs of the art gum go everywhere and splatter. And the trouble with it is it kind of looks like just random splatter. It doesn't look like things are laying flat on the ground. And so then you have to go back in and kind of flatten out the bottom of these little round blips that are everywhere. And it's really maybe more work than it's worth. I did it, and then I removed some of them, and I'd have to repaint, and then I come back in and actually like the look better of what I did with the brush. So I would advise, I guess, to do all the rocks, big and small, on the ground in the next stage, before you start doing any work with the shadows. Shadows on the ground should probably be last, and then you're not going to interfere with any subsequent stages, because they're already done. So do as much as you can, and put in all the scrub and brush and all of your little details, and because everything is subject to shadows cast and shadows that are on the object itself, and it's much easier to do it at the very end. I also got initially, with my shadow of this tree, I got it too dark, and it was just kind of overpowering, and I had to do a lot of lifts and make some changes, using quite a bit of water and then half a roll of paper towels, it seemed like, before I got rid of all the stuff that I wanted to take up. Now, you may not see that happen here in the video, because my battery went dead at one point and I didn't know it. And anyway, you'll see the result, but the process remains the same. Here on the ground, there's quite a bit of art gum going to go down, specks and stuff all over the place, and then I do some lifts, and I just keep building up color and various earth tones on the ground, and I leave quite a bit of highlighted area too, where there isn't shadow. This is a relatively level area or plateau on the top here, and it's catching a lot of sunlight. So that's the sunlight part is just a touch of ochre and a little bit of raw sienna, and mostly that takes care of it in a very dilute wash, and I drag my brush and touch it. But here you see me starting to apply more of this goop. It's pretty thick, and I haven't diluted it with the adhesive remover yet. That's I did for the little flicks and stuff. So I put this down and I take it off, and I put it down and I take it off, and it's probably do best just with my little paintbrush. I'm taking more time. So I'll come back when I move to another part of the part of the process, and I'll talk about it at that point. So I've got a little dental tool. I don't know what dentists do with this one, but it's got kind of a little tiny chisel on the end. And I'm actually using it to shape some of these little blobs of art gum. Try to make them look more like they could be stones. And the round blobs need to be shaped, otherwise they just don't make sense. They don't look natural. So some of these I just take off completely, and others I will push up on the base or pull it to the side and flatten it off so that it looks more like it's embedded. And there are places where these don't belong, and I'll get rid of some of them, and others I will keep. And you can see they're all over the place. But the rocks that I painted in the shaded area over by the base of the tree there, I did that really just by using a liner brush and coming, putting a little blob of color and then coming back after that dried and put a little tiny highlight on it. So I did those individually and not so much with the art gum. I tried to use the art gum, but it wasn't very effective. Now, these little specks, you might think, well, that's going to ruin all the paint that you put down underneath. And it really doesn't. If you don't leave it on long, it won't affect the color, and you can wipe it off pretty easily. Now, if you put down a big, giant, heavy patch of it and leave it for quite a while, you might have problems. It might lift the color that's beneath it, so you got to be conscious of that. But I'm not too worried on the ground here. And now what I'm trying to do is there's one more level to the this kind of plateau here in the foreground, and it kind of drops down toward the entryway there. So you've got rocks, or at least hard ground, and then it moves into kind of a rock ledge that drops down maybe 6-8 inches to another level. And this sort of leads you past the entryway door. And so we have to try and create some levels here. And we're going to do that by shading these rock walls as though it's a little mini canyon. I mean, it may only drop 6-8 inches, but it has all the same properties as the canyon walls. So up on the top, on the flats, it's catching a lot more light, and then it's going to come down at an angle where it will be darker and darker, and eventually light again. So here I'm just putting in a little bit of raw sienna, maybe a touch of yellow ochre, and I want to keep this very light because that's near, or that portion is going to be practically flat. So in order to keep that value very light, put down some color, and then I'm going to pick it up or dab it with a paper towel and pick up some of that color. Watercolor does dry typically lighter than it looks when you first apply it, but you can't ever get the white of the paper back if you put color down and you're dissatisfied and you want to get rid of that completely. It's never quite the same. You never get that original white that you started with. So I'm adding a lot of water to that, and it's kind of creating a base here. So this is the lightest portion, and then when I get to the side walls of these little this little drop down, then I'm going to be adding a little bit more color and creating the look of a stone embedded in the ground and that has an angle down to the area next to the door and beyond it. Now that I did the shadow of the tree already on the ground, but the shadow of this, the tree shadow continues a little bit over these stones, and I will apply that after I get these all done. When this is all sketched in and complete, or nearly complete, then I will continue the shadow of the tree over the top of this too. Shadows everywhere. Also, I'm going to be adding a prickly pear cactus right beyond that door and beyond the little stone ledge here. And it's all I did for that was I sketched it in and just it was just like doing its own individual painting. It wasn't all that difficult, and for a resource I just looked it up on Google Images and found a prickly pear cactus, and that was in the Grand Canyon area, and I blew it. I just had the image open on my iPad, and I just kind of used it as reference as I went along, and it was pretty good. I didn't have to print anything out. I just left it open on the iPad and looked at it every now and then. And after I got about halfway into it, I kind of took over and changed from the photograph. But I got my critical information just Google Images. It works really great for things like that. So I'm just putting a little more color to the ground here that's in the distance, and I'm painting over the tops of those little blobs of art gum, and I'm going to dry it and I'll remove it, and then I think I splatter a whole bunch more of the art gum and continue building up my base here and the little mini cliff here in the foreground, and that will get progressively darker and more contrast with the highlights and the shadows, and and then I'll start working on that little cactus, because I felt like I needed something else here. It's just too much area that doesn't have anything going on, and cactus is kind of interesting. So I'll pick up the pace here, and I'll come back to talk about the finale.
Okay.